now I'm hearing myself, so I assume that I'm hearing myself, so that must be, program must be open. Yeah.
This program is made possible in part by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bales Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO. It has been my pleasure over the years to have reported on and met some of the fine people of Nebraska's Army and Air National Guard units. And this week it is my distinct pleasure to have the Adjutant General of the Nebraska National Guard on my show, Major General Roger Lemke. Thank you for joining us today. You've been in this office a year. Thank goodness you had a little time to get acclimated. Not that, you generals know how SOP and how it works, but it has been an incredible last 2 months, has it not?
Oh, it sure has, Carol. I would say, though, that the things that we are doing, the planning, the preparation, and when we've had to accepting a mission and deploying into that mission, are things that we train for all the time anyway. So it's not like we're doing things that different. We're just doing them at a little quicker, and we've had to work with some different administrative rules and things like that because of the situation and the nature of the war that we're in.
And of course we're talking about the aftermath of September 11th, and as we tape this show, things are moving right and left in Afghanistan.
They certainly are.
Their opposition forces, the so-called Northern Alliance, and the anti-Taliban Pashtun forces are just running through that country. Apparently Osama bin Laden and his people, if they are still in Afghanistan, are on the run. Even if they aren't, they're probably on the run.
I would sure think so.
But the mission goes on two fronts. There are two operation names, Enduring Freedom, which is the one over there.
Yes.
And Noble Eagle, which is the home front.
That's right.
And the Nebraska Guard has work in both of these.
That's right. Let me start with the smaller of our two missions right now, which is the Enduring Freedom, the overseas.
We should mention there is a fly on the set. Now, normally I wouldn't even mention that, but I want you to know that the general cannot pull rank over that fly.
That's right.
Yeah, he doesn't listen to orders.
That's exactly right, yeah.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Enduring Freedom, we currently have two KC-135 tanker aircraft in Europe with about 30 personnel that are currently flying missions, refueling missions in support of the airstrikes and other missions over and around Afghanistan. I've been told that it was perhaps our aircraft that helped refuel the B-2s that played a part in the war early on. On the home front, the Noble Eagle part, we've actually got a number of Army units involved there, plus a little bit of the Air Guard. On the Army side, I think most people are aware of the airport security mission that we have, and we've got we will be increasing to somewhere in the area of 70 soldiers that are throughout the state, helping with security at airports, commercial airports throughout the state, primarily Omaha and Lincoln. We also have a number of soldiers that are involved with security operations with our own military facilities and assets here in Nebraska. And then finally, some of our Air Guard security police have been activated. They're currently in place, but with our aircraft here in Lincoln, the security right at Lincoln Air Base is important.
It's interesting that, and I didn't go down to Lincoln during the Gulf War, so I'm sure that all the bases were on alert throughout the country. But seeing the big concrete blocks outside Offutt, outside your what they call on Military Road, outside the airport there, and the professionalism but firmness of the officers out there. Unless you see that, and if you've lived in this country, unless you see that, you know that we're at war in a sense.
Oh, absolutely.
But there is something about that is sobering to a civilian like me. I mean, it should be sobering to you, I'm sure. But
well, it is. one thing to point out about the soldiers that you see out there, and the important thing to remember about this being America, those are citizen soldiers. They're not professional. They're not beholden to me. Ultimately, they're beholden to the President of the United States and our nation. They're kids that were in school, having other jobs that have been called to duty and performing, and they'll go back to being students and workers when the war's over. So instead of the militaristic aspect of what you see, think about the fact that these are citizens.
See, I did mention that fly for a reason, because I knew people were going to see it. He likes you, and that is, you know, it took me even several years into my reporting career to get it straight, the difference between the Guard and Reserve.
Yes.
They are technically all known as reservists.
Yes, that's
with
correct.
a little R, sort of.
That's right.
As a generic
Yeah,
term.
that's right. If you're a reservist, and we have reservists here in Nebraska, and we have some reservists that have been called up, but they strictly have a federal mission. Their reporting chain is strictly through federal authorities. The governor has no power or authority over reservists, nor does he the active side. The National Guard, we have two missions, a state mission as well as our federal mission. People that were in Jackson, Nebraska know the Guard because we had security personnel up there guarding the town when they evacuated after the tornado back in August. People last fall from the fires in northwest Nebraska remember us flying up there with helicopters and providing other support. So we have a state mission in addition to the federal mission. Our normal reporting responsibility, my boss, is the governor of the state of Nebraska.
So the chain of command, if you're activated, if you're put on alert and activated on the federal side
Yes.
of your responsibility, do the orders go through the governor's office?
No, then as soon as they become activated, then technically they fall under an active component, change of command, be it Army or Air, so that our airmen overseas and the aircraft that are with them now are currently under an active component, and they are no longer under my responsibility or the governor's.
So the conduit of
Yes.
the flow of command
Yes.
can move back and forth.
Back and forth, yes, just depends on the kinds of orders that they have.
What numbers are we talking about right now? You mentioned we have, of course, the Air National Guardsmen who have took their two C-135 Strato tankers over and are performing, as you said, may have been right in there
Yes.
helping with the bombing raids. I got a kick out of, oddly enough, entertainment tonight. We were flipping through, and they were getting ready to go over and entertain the troops. And they were just overwhelmed by, they were in a craft that had to be refueled. And just flabbergasted by how important that was to get them from point A to, and it really hit them.
Yes.
Duh, you know, there's all these entertainers, and you know, I suppose we stereotype, but it really hit home how important a refueling operation is.
Absolutely. Aircraft will be refueled anywhere from 2 to 6 times or more on a mission. Typically, you load the aircraft down with weapons. Their range is quite short. They'll typically refuel not too long after takeoff. They'll typically top off before they head into the hot area, the target area. They'll typically top off again when they come out of the target area. General policy is you try to keep the aircraft as full of fuel as you can all the time. So the tankers are a key part. Without the tankers and refueling aircraft, the Air Force, the Navy couldn't fly their missions.
Refueling has basically changed the range of the Air Force.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can take about any aircraft, and the only limit that you have on endurance typically is the human, the pilot involved.
Yeah, how long they can
How
go,
long
and
they
they
can stand
do go a long time.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we have fighter pilots, single crews that can get out there 15, 16 hours if they have to.
So we have people involved in the refueling and
Yes.
these what they call forming the land bridge from
Yes.
the area that you can fly from,
Right.
that we're allowed to fly from,
Right.
into where we want to end up.
Exactly.
And we all know where that
Right.
was. Then you mentioned that just recently you sent some of your Army aircraft maintenance.
We had a unit just this last weekend that was activated and deployed to a site elsewhere in the U.S., primarily to backfill for another unit that's been, I believe, deployed overseas. Their orders call for them to be on duty for anywhere up to a year, with the provision that they could be added on to that. Now, we don't know if they'll be gone that long, but quite frankly, at this point in time, we don't know how long they might be gone.
That backfill, is important.
Yes, it is.
I don't think people realize it, and I mean, they just didn't think about it, that you deploy something that doesn't, that base still has to have a function going on, has to be
Exactly.
protected. I mean, various functions
Yes.
that go on in a base. So
it-
it's, and it's not like the B team.
No.
It's just that these people were ready to go.
That is, in many ways, for many portions of the National Guard and Reserves, a primary mission. And that is to step in behind that first deployment, if you will, of active component forces. And again, our training typically is every bit as top-notch as what the actives can get. Obviously, it's not as much. They train every day. We train 2 days a month and
But-
2 weeks.
But, yeah, on all things being equal, if you
Yes.
took same age,
Yes.
same training.
Right.
But I know that in Desert Storm, the people that we sent on the medical side and the medical transport had years more flying experience, years more experience. They were more mature. I mean,
Yes.
just in terms of age, they'd served longer. They've been in Vietnam. They have the life experience that's
Right.
a little different. And I've heard several comments from people in active duty about the word they would get back on Guard members, specifically the Nebraska Army Guard that
Right.
was served over there.
You're right. Typically, in the active Army, soldiers and officers tend to move from assignment to assignment, in and out of different kinds of missions. In the National Guard, we tend to stay in one mission. So a pilot will stay in the National Guard for quite a long time, acquire a large number of hours. Also, in many cases, our civilian experience juxtaposed over to a foreign environment, we could do many things and have many ideas that somebody strictly with an active background wouldn't have. I can tell you a story in Bosnia of the 49th Division that was over there, and they were actually doing things with terms of the local power grids, because they had the expertise from civilian background to work issues with power grid and transformers and things like that to help bring the power back to that country.
So that would have been fascinating, because they walked into an area that wasn't as, let's say, electrically
Mm-hmm.
sophisticated. But the basic science and the experience of the people that came in there, that they brought with them,
Yes.
in addition to their rank and their
Right.
all this, that's the one thing that I would say, at least on paper, that the American people are getting one of the best bangs for the buck
Oh, absolutely.
on the face of this earth.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to
Oh no!
suck up to the general.
If you took a look and tried to do the same thing with nothing but, if you will, full-time soldiers and airmen, it would be a pretty costly proposition. What you have here are soldiers that have been well trained and are prepared and sustain that training at a high level, but their normal life is spent in the civilian world, and they do many things because of their training. They contribute to the civilian side of the world of our nation, in addition to their military service.
It's win-win on both sides.
It's win-win on both sides, absolutely.
Now, I know in the Air Force, and correct me, since you are Air Force, I know you can answer this question, but I don't know if if they use the terminology in the Army, but they call it Operation Total Force, I believe, in the Air Force.
Yes.
How they try to make it seamless.
Yes.
And that these are, I hate to use the word, but in the manufacturing world, they would call
Yeah.
it interchangeable parts.
Right.
And that seems
Yeah.
rather
The Army-
inhumane. But,
yeah.
but
the Army is getting there too, and it has the same thing. And the common term that General Shinseki uses, the Chief of Staff of the Army, is one Army, one fight, which means that you have the active component, the National Guard, and the Reserves all together in this. So the Army is getting there, as the Air Force has been now for a number of years.
One of the things that your people do is, in addition to training here, they do training, I know, at least in terms of the refueling missions
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. They go overseas a couple times a year
Yes.
and work as part of that interchangeable. They're plugged in with regular force.
Absolutely. We do that on the air side, and typically, many times it is an overseas deployment where we get that kind of training. On the Army side, this last summer, we were part of a total force which contained reserves, guard, and active component in the South Dakota and Wyoming area in an operation called Golden Thunder, which simulated a movement of troops and within a territory like Macedonia or Bosnia or something like that. It had some of the fighting forces, it had the logistics, the transportation, and everything. So we were all working together, practicing that opportunity to work together and coordinate.
Ironically, there is one of those kinds of exercises happening overseas,
That's
even
right.
during everything else that's going on. Isn't
That's-
that right?
that's right.
Nebraska's participating in?
That's right. Operation Bright Star is actually occurring in Egypt right now. It's been ongoing since September. We have a role in that. We have a rotation of forces going over, packages going over every few weeks, and we'll be there in some number until November. Well, we'll be coming home in another week or so. And it involves a number of NATO and allied nations, including Egypt and other Middle Eastern nations, European nations, and the U.S. So we're all working together now on a joint operation to demonstrate our ability to communicate and maneuver together.
It is a different world.
Oh, absolutely.
When we went into, let's say, into World War II, for instance, we pretty much knew whose side, what people we would be working with. And although there probably had to be some communication, a lot of people getting on the same page, a learning curve. The idea, I suppose, is to get different countries to be able to, in the event something happens, that there is a less of a learning curve.
Yeah, the more we can cooperate with countries, they can understand us and we can understand them. The better off we are. I mean, the better the opportunity to avert a conflict before it starts, and if conflict is inevitable, the better the opportunity to work together quickly to subdue whoever the adversary might be.
President Putin, as we tape this show, is in the United States, and I heard him talk today about, he was questioned at Rice University about becoming a member of NATO. I mean, in your Cold War days in the Air Force, could you imagine even this, this may or may not happen, or maybe some new configuration, but could you have imagined the kinds of things that changes?
Not at all. The fall of the wall in 89, 90 was such a dramatic event, even perhaps maybe the most dramatic event in the 20th century, although people might argue D-Day or an event like that maybe. But certainly in a decade, going from being the most mortal, bitter enemy that we could have to be a true ally is just amazing.
It was a paradigm shift in terms of not just alignments, but in terms of how wars would be. I mean, we have an example right now of what is war? War wasn't war. You have this land and we have this land, and the guy's going to go in, and the guy that takes the land is and owns that patch of property.
Today, war is ideology, it's culture, which is the reason why terrorism is such a distinct factor, something that you didn't really discuss or hear about back in the 70s and 80s during the Cold War. So the nature of war at this time is definitely changing, and changing rapidly.
I want to talk about, we've heard a lot, and we've heard a lot of respect given and kind words given to our men and women that are leaving their homes, both to go abroad in Operation Enduring Freedom, but also those that are, standing there with their guns at the airport and making people feel a lot more secure, especially in this time of year where they want to be with relatives. It's very nice to hear, but do we really have a support system in place, both in terms of what you do, and I'm sure you do, and in terms of our employers, and they're in a bind, a lot of them.
Absolutely.
And in terms of just how we, hopefully this isn't going to go on for 6 months, which is sort of the magic time with an employer. But, I mean, how do you feel? Where have we come, and how far have we come, and what would you like to see more?
Well, on the family side, we've been building a family program, a strong family program, really since Desert Storm. That's when it became apparent that that was probably a weak area in the National Guard and Reserve system. At an active base, your families all live close to base and they support each other.
Right.
In a state like Nebraska, the National Guard...
23 counties, 26 counties?
Yes, all over the state. And so a family typically isn't going to have another family close by that's associated with the military. So we had to build our own family support structure, and we've done that. And actually, we've demonstrated the viability of that recently this year. We've had a deployment to Macedonia and a deployment to Kuwait that were lengthy, that involved where we implemented and used the family support program to great effect. The employer side, I would say that since I've been in this job, we've had outstanding support from our employers. I can count on one hand the number of problems, and they've been quickly resolved. Their employers are just as patriotic as anybody else, especially in Nebraska, and so they've always been very supportive. The question is to how long they can be supportive, or how long can we call on their employees. It's a question that we debate and discuss all the time.
And it varies from business to business.
Yes, it
I mean,
does.
they miss these people whether they're in a huge business or not.
Yes.
But if you're out in Gering and you have a little service station and there's
Yes.
two mechanics and one of them got
Yes.
sent out, that can cripple.
Right, or you're a large company and your key salesman is called. I
Right.
mean, that can have a direct effect on the bottom line. So yes, it's a difficult situation. We do have ESGR, which is the employer support of Guard and Reserve. It's a group of volunteers at the state and national level that is used to help communicate with employers with regard to law, and also to help work conflicts with employers, and also it's a mechanism to help keep them informed of what's going on with our soldiers. And so that's a mechanism that we use to help bring the employers in, at least keep them informed of what's happening.
If you had one thing you could tell the people of Nebraska to be aware of about the job your men and women do, what would it be? Whether it's something they already know, or maybe something they're not, maybe.
The one thing I would say is that level of patriotism that has enveloped us since 9/11, we need to keep it up. Again, our soldiers are also citizens. They can sense when the public is no longer interested in what they're doing, and I can tell them very directly that it affects their morale. And so, if anything, we've got to keep that sense of patriotism, that sense of support up, and it's going to be a long time. People try to put a time frame on this, and unfortunately, I just don't think that's going to be possible.
And then there might be aftermath or aftershocks.
Yes.
Crop up in different places.
That's
and
right.
and other governments may need our support who have supported
Exactly.
us.
That's right.
So we don't know. I mean, Lord forbid, but there could be a tumble in Pakistan tomorrow.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
and we'll be called upon.
Exactly. The chances are this won't end in Afghanistan. There will be other events, and the other thing will be it won't be a constant level of activity. Chances are there could be a relaxation of action for a period of time, and then all of a sudden an increase. So it won't be just a steady accelerating pace to a victory. It'll be ebbs and flows as time goes on.
One of the other things that I think speaks very well for the Nebraska Guard is that it's been around a while. I mean, of course, you go back east, and
Yes.
they go back to the,
The 1700s.
right. But we had a guard, some semblance of a guard, pretty soon after we became,
Yes.
had somewhat of a name.
Yes. 1854 was when the militia, back then what it was called, was initially established, and we can trace our roots back to 1854, and we've got quite a record of service and combat that dates back to the Indian Wars, through World War I.
Well, the
and
Civil War,
certainly World War II.
3,300 Nebraskans.
Yes.
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you think
Yes.
how many are there now? But they
Well,
were part
that's about
of
what we have in the Army now.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Then you go through every
Yep.
conflict. You
Every
go through
conflict.
every major flood, every
Yes.
major. Well, it doesn't even have to be a major tornado.
Right.
In the state, and the Air Guard itself is the second oldest
Yes.
Air Guard unit
That's
in the
right.
country.
I can't remember the first one, but there was a little political maneuver there at the beginning that prevented us from being first. But yes, we're the second oldest Air Guard. And of course, the Air Guards are new. They were formed shortly after World War II.
Right.
And so their lineage
Well, that
dates
was
back to that
their
time
Air
frame.
Force only goes back
Exactly.
so far.
Yes, it only goes back itself.
And I'm sure
to,
Army and Marines and Navy would be glad to remind you of that.
Yeah,
on any
well,
given
the
day.
Navy now doesn't. The Navy and Marines don't have. They have reserves, but they don't have National Guard.
Right, but I'm just
Yeah.
teasing you about that
The
that
inter-service rivalry,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. So this is a great continuity, and other things that maybe mean a lot to you, but just they don't make it into the newspapers. And that is the safety record.
Yes.
Is incredible, as on the air side for sure.
Exactly, and for the soldiers that left this last weekend, the number one message to them was be safe. Even though They're going to be doing things that will support a war effort. There's still nothing that they're doing that should compromise their lives. And so safety has always been our number one action and the number one things we talk about to the soldiers.
Well, you weren't around when they were a little disgruntled on the air side when they had to abandon their fighter.
Actually, I was.
Were you?
I was
Were
part
you?
of that, yes. I was part of that.
And that was a sad day.
Yes.
And you know, I don't know if it's testosterone or what, but those fighters must be awful fun to fly.
They were fun, but as it turned out, the mission that we have now is actually in many ways far more exciting. Quite frankly, with the reconnaissance airplanes, all we could do was really train. We never were involved in any real missions for the Air Force. With the KC-135 tankers, we're virtually involved with real-world missions virtually every day. And so, in Desert Storm, we were among that was before our time. In the Kosovo action, we were the first Air Guard air refueling unit called over. 96
you beat
hours.
your deadline too.
We
I mean,
sure
you were
did.
over there. You had just hours notice. And
Exactly, and also for Afghanistan for Enduring Freedom, we were among the first to get overseas to deploy. So that's exciting. Whether you're flying a fighter or a tanker, that's exciting.
the shift in having your own little job, in other words, being a unit that would be shipped out, as in the days of yore. I mean, World War II is a perfect example,
Yes.
and then one of the Nebraska units split up and it got sent over to Hawaii. But I mean, basically, you were a Nebraska unit. Or
Yes.
Now, there's support is the idea.
Yes.
Again, that you can fit people in.
Yes, but maybe people don't understand this, but especially on the Army side, we have a number of different units in Nebraska that perform a number of different functions, and those little individual functions are the ones that will get called. The aviation maintenance unit that just went is a relatively small unit. Only around 40 personnel are going out of the entire state. We've had other units like that in the state that could get called. So no, you probably won't see the Nebraska National Guard in mass go. You will see small select units that will get called up and perform.
Sort of like a micro unit.
Yes.
Now, one other thing that I wanted to point out is that there is some retraining going on, or retooling of men and women. One of them is in the area of chemical and bio
Yes.
hazards.
Biochemical warfare. The first of the 134th Regiment stood down about 2 months ago, and it's being replaced, or in some fashion, with another unit that's going to be involved with chemical reconnaissance and decontamination. These are soldiers that will go out into the field, into supposedly contaminated area, determine what the chemical is, what the agent is, and then be able to take care of themselves, decontaminate themselves when they leave.
Well, even though even a state Nebraska has people trained in that, it's kind of reassuring to me to know that we have extra people
Yes.
hanging around this state.
Yeah, typically our first line of response is always your local fire or police, typically your fire that will have some capability in chemical and hazmat. And having that little extra capability from the National Guard side is very reassuring.
Well, General, you have just been a top to come here, and I want to congratulate you also today that we taped this. Your first grandson
Yes, we're
is
very
born
proud.
in Omaha.
In
I might
Omaha,
point
yes,
out.
very
I mean,
proud.
you had to come from Lincoln
Yes.
to see this little dude.
That's right.
I want to thank you for being with us. And if you want to learn more about the Nebraska National Guard, you can go to the State of Nebraska website, and you can maneuver a little. Won't take you long to get there. Again, thank you, Major General Roger Lemke, Adjutant General of the Nebraska Army and Air National Guard, and thank you for joining us this week on Consider This.
This program is made possible in part by Nebraskans for Public Television.